So wonderful to be with all of you. I thought I would bring not only my Buddhist mala beads, but also the Science of Mind, Gold Edge Edition. So as I was looking at The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, I just kind of flipped it randomly and looked at a few different passages. There's so many wonderful jewels in this book. So as I was meditating on what to share with you today, Ernest Holmes inspired me to speak on constipation. It's a wonderful little section here on constipation. I like this line here. It is necessary that we release all thoughts as well as things that clutter up our lives. That's so true. And it also says here, a thought of love is always healing, and particularly so in the case of constipation. If the practitioner has a full realization that love fulfills all the laws of life, his life and the patient's life, that there are no restrictions, no burdens, no inhibitions in love, which is the very life within, healing will follow. If one would take time, once a day at least, to let go of all that is not true and lay hold of reality, let go of doubt, distrust, worry, condemnation, and fear, and lay hold of life in its expressions of beauty, truth, and wholeness, his or her mental congestion would be healed. So, I'm not really going to talk about physical constipation so much today, thank goodness. Primarily, I want to talk about our spiritual and mental and emotional constipation, the ways that we feel stuck within, and the way we feel stuck in our relationships and in our work life and in the way we relate on planet Earth. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. So I'd like to just share some things from my own spiritual practice that have been helpful to me to help me get unstuck, to get unconstipated internally. But before I do that, I'd like to share a little story from the Chinese tradition. There was a farmer many, many centuries ago who had a son, and they had some horses and other animals. One day, one of the horses, well, their only horse, they're very poor, ran away. And so all the neighbors, they like to gossip in China. Not just China, of course. But they were just saying, oh, that's such bad luck that you lost your horse. Well, the next day, in comes the horse galloping with a horse friend. And so now they capture the second horse and corral them both. And now they have two horses. So all the neighbors are all like saying, wow, what good luck. So the son tries to tame the second horse, but it's very wild. And so he gets thrown off the horse and breaks his leg. And so all the neighbors come around and say, oh, what bad luck. And then the emperor's armies came through the village, and they were drafting all young, abled men into the army. And back in those days, once you go into the army, you usually don't come back home. You either die in battle or something. You never come back because you go miles and miles and miles away. China's pretty big, especially when you don't have a car. So they were going to draft her, but they didn't draft this farmer's son because he had a broken leg. And then all the neighbors said, oh, what good luck. Isn't that interesting? Good luck, bad luck, good luck, bad luck, good luck. What is it really? What is really good luck? What is really bad luck? Really, honestly, our happiness isn't dependent on external circumstances. But we make it dependent through our choice of interpretation of whatever is happening, right? And this applies to all kinds of events in our lives. For example, Lee went to India wanting to have a particular experience, and life gave him some more extra experiences that he wasn't expecting. But isn't that the way life always is? Have you ever experienced life in any other way? Does life only manifest in the way you expect? Can someone raise their hand if that's actually what has always happened in your entire life? Okay, so there's a clue. There's a clue from reality itself that if you think that your expectations manifest 100% of the time, and if you think that's the law of the universe, think again, because that's not our experience. So, the Buddha taught us to try to look more at life through the lens of practicality and from our experience, and not just from blind theory, but actual experience. I think that we would be much happier if instead of imposing our expectations on life, we allowed ourselves to be more open and fresh in our perspectives. I think that's a very important key to our happiness. And so instead of judging everything as pleasant or unpleasant, good luck or bad luck, try to drop the labels just for a few seconds. Just drop them and just meet life as it is. One of the wonderful things that we teach in my tradition is something called mindfulness meditation. There are many different kinds of meditations, and they're all very good, and they all have their place. However, it's my belief and experience that mindfulness meditation is really the ground of all other kinds of meditations. You can use other kinds of meditations, and they're very helpful, and they're important, but if you have mindfulness as a base, it just makes any other kind of spiritual practice or meditation even more powerful. For example, if you're trying to do visualization or manifestation meditation or creative visualization or something like that, that's wonderful, but if you also practice mindfulness as a solid base, then I believe that's what makes any other practice even more powerful. So, in mindfulness, we just meet life as it is. Mindfulness sometimes has been defined as non-judgmental awareness and also just pure attention. There are other aspects of mindfulness too. There is a part of mindfulness that takes a little bit of your will and gently reminds you to come back to your spiritual practice. For example, when you're meditating and you're using concentration energy to stay focused on your object of meditation, let's say that one object would be the breath. That's an easy one because you always have your breath, with you. You might not always have a crystal or a candle or a mala, but you always have your breath. So it's your meditation object wherever you go. So you can concentrate on that focus, and then if you kind of go off wandering and think about other things, but your mindfulness will just gently help you remind you that you want to just gently come back to your focus, your concentration. So mindfulness has a passive aspect of just pure acceptance and awareness, and also mindfulness has the aspect of just gently bringing you back to concentration, just to remind you of what you're doing. So this is very important practice, because many times we want to jump right into solving things right away. And it's important to solve problems in our life. But before we try to solve a problem, don't you think it's important to actually see what's actually happening? Because many times we're not really seeing what's going on. We're seeing our label of what's going on. We're labeling it as bad luck, when in fact, maybe it's not really bad luck or good luck, it's just what is. So many times when we want to come up with a solution, we need to first just see what's actually happening. And mindfulness helps us with that, to really see what's going on, instead of jumping right away to trying to solve things. So this is a habit of ours, especially in American culture, to just fix everything, to fix other people especially. So this can actually cause us suffering and make it become a constipated obstacle to our happiness. So we need to be careful and mindful of that. One way of thinking about mindfulness meditation is to think of it as reality acceptance practice. RAP. I just made that up. I like that. Reality acceptance practice. Now you won't ever forget. And that is so very important. So, Lee wanted to go to India and experience a retreat there, and he did for a short time. And then the monsoons came, and all kinds of things happened. But it's so nice that he was airlifted to come back, and he's back here today. I wish he was speaking today so I could hear what he has to say, but he wants me to speak today, and that's what I'm doing. So what do we do with all these things that happen in life? Well, we learn to just accept it and go with the flow. If you think about it, and I've meditated on this before, just look at all of nature. Look at the way nature operates. Learn from nature. And then look at how humans do things. It's very interesting. Humans create all of these mathematical formulas and scientific theories. And they have these perfect circles and perfect squares and all these perfect kinds of so-called perfect geometrical shapes. Have you ever seen a perfect geometrical shape in nature? A leaf. Is there such a thing as the perfect shape of a leaf? No. All the different leaves, there's so much variety. So why, if this is the case in nature, why do we look at our lives and say, and judge it, this is a perfect life, that's an imperfect life? How do we know? We're using some sort of theory, mental construct, and overlaying it on reality. But that's not real. It's not in harmony with reality, is it? In fact, we can't say that someone living, 80 years of life, that's a good life, versus someone living 40 years of life, that's not a good life. Who's to say? That's a mental construct that we're overlaying on reality. Because the reality is, people live at all kinds of different lengths of time. Some people live for 12 years, some people live for 90 years, some people live for 65 years. Is there a particular length that's better than another? Can we really say that? We can't really say that. That would be just a mental construct or judgment. So, one of the secrets to happiness is to actually accept reality as it is, to actually accept it as it is. Now, a lot of times people will ask me after I talk about this sort of thing, well, does that mean I should just accept if someone beats me up or wants to walk all over me or do something bad to me? That's not the meaning of this teaching. The meaning is if someone already hit you, accept that you've been hit. Then do something about it. Okay? But if this is the way life is manifesting, accept that this is the way it is manifesting in this moment. And then in the next moment, do something to shift it, to transform it. But in this moment, accept what is. This is a key to transformation. Because many times we want to skip over to the transformation part, skip over to the fix everything part. But you're going to mess things up even more for yourself and create more suffering because there's a very crucial step that you're skipping, which is prior to fixing, prior to transforming, prior to shifting is the fundamental practice of acceptance, awareness and acceptance. So maybe that's the Eastern part of the equation, and the Western part is the transformation and fixing and solving and shifting aspect. They all, of course, go together. And the reality is there's no such thing as East if there's no West. And there's no such thing as West if there's no East. You see, everything goes together. So I'm just here to emphasize the more Eastern aspect of the teachings, the universal teachings, just because I think we don't hear it as much in our culture. And so I feel like it's part of my mission is to help remind people of this aspect of the truth so that we don't forget. Because we get so busy trying to solve everything. And before we do that, step back, take a breath, and just see what's actually happening. See what's the reality of the situation. So, meditation, mindfulness meditation, is one important key practice in undoing our spiritual constipation. Another practice is the practice of gratitude. And you know, mindfulness and gratitude are actually two sides of the same coin, you might say. There's no way that you can become more mindful and not also become more grateful. Because the more mindful you become, the more aware you are of how many wonders there are within and all around you. And it makes it very hard for you to take for granted all these wondrous things. You know, every time I lead people in a body mindfulness exercise, when they're, sometimes we do lying down meditation, and we take about 20 minutes to just scan and be aware of each part of the body and just breathe with that part of the body and say thank you to that part of the body and relax that part of the body and bless that part of the body, and also contemplate all the wonderful things that part of the body does, like the heart that beats and brings blood to all the different parts of our body and all these different functions. By practicing that, many times people afterwards tell me, wow, I've never said thank you to my liver before. And it really felt good. I really felt grateful. You know, all these different parts of my body that I just take for granted. So it's so nice to just take a few minutes to be mindful and to be grateful. It just makes you so much happier. Because see, what happens is when we are focused so much on our suffering and all the problems that we have in life, it's like, looking at our suffering and says, oh my gosh, there's so much suffering in my life. I turn to the right, there's suffering. I turn to the left, there's suffering. I look down, there's suffering. Oh my gosh, there's suffering up there. Suffering's everywhere. I just can't escape it. But mindfulness meditation is not about rejecting our suffering or ignoring it or denying its existence. It's simply putting it in perspective. When we can put down our suffering in perspective, then we see, oh, there's other things going on too. There are so many good things that are going on. There's not just monsoons going on in the world. There are flowers growing everywhere. There are people doing volunteer work. There are people building hospitals and shelters. There are people volunteering to give a helping hand to a neighbor. There's so much good in the world, so much positive in the universe, so much more, actually, in fact. Through meditation practice, through mindfulness, you realize how much more good there is than the temporary, short-term, small-scale, sufferings that we go through on this planet. So when you can put it in perspective, it makes it a whole lot easier to deal with. Another teaching of the Buddha is one day he was telling his disciples, okay, let's say you take a cup of salt and you pour that cup of salt into a bowl of water. Stir it up for a few minutes. Try to drink it. Can you drink that water? No, it's too salty. You can't drink that water. But take the same cup of salt, pour it into a clear stream of water. Wade in the water and try to stir it up, as the water's going by. And then drink from that stream. Can you still drink from that stream of pure water? Yes, you can. What's the difference? It's the same cup of salt, which is a metaphor for our suffering, and yet the experience is different. What's the difference? The difference is when we are very unmindful, our world is very small, like a bowl of water. And so our suffering can seem overwhelming, can seem so big. But when our mindfulness brings us awareness of the entirety of life and all its wonder and goodness, that same suffering isn't going to overwhelm us. We are much more able to handle it because it's in perspective, right? So, mindfulness and gratefulness, very important practices. Another wonderful practice I enjoy that helps me get unconstipated is the practice of saturating my mind with spiritual truth and teaching. And recently, I've been doing that with the Science of Mind. The Living the Science of Mind, especially, I bought the CD set, Living the Science of Mind, and I just play it in my car wherever I go. I sometimes don't. Sometimes I start realizing, I'm not paying full attention because I'm looking for a road or something, and then I don't know what he just said on the CD. But that's okay. It's still in there somewhere, and just by playing it, there's like 15 CDs. So it's like by playing it over a month's time, I'm saturating my mind. And even if my conscious mind only picks up on a part of it, that's a very powerful something that my conscious mind gets. And my unconscious mind, or subconscious mind, I believe, does still pick up on the things that I didn't consciously remember hearing. So I think that's a very powerful practice. Think about what you do. Do you listen to the news all day long? Do you look at the internet every hour constantly? Do you check your cell phone constantly? If you do that, and I'm not saying it's bad, just be aware of what you're doing. Just be aware of how you are feeding your mind. Because what goes in must come out. Okay? So just be aware. If you're complaining about why do you always feel negative? Why do you feel like the world is closing in on you and it seems like a very dangerous and dark place? Well, duh. Think about what you're listening to all the time. If you're programming your mind by listening to all these things, guess what? It's going to come out, manifest in the way you feel about life and about yourself. So don't do that. You don't need to eat in and drink in those kinds of things because those things create blockages and create more constipation. And by the way, speaking of the constipation, one metaphor I love is, to me, mindfulness meditation isn't anything spectacular. It's just being regular. It's just doing my meditation in the morning and or in the evening, just for 20 or more minutes every day, just being regular. I'm not trying to get some powerful revelation from my meditation. I'm not trying to have some cosmic bliss or, be uplifted into the seventh heaven or something like that every time I sit. I just sit. Just like I go to the toilet and I just sit every day. It's just something to help me get regular, because if I don't meditate regularly, psychological, emotional stuff starts accumulating, and over several years of time, it becomes very, very much a problem in my life. But by being regular and releasing every day a little bit at a time, because that's really what you're doing in meditation, you're just being, and you're releasing and letting go and letting be. It just makes it so much more easier throughout the rest of the day and throughout your life to just let go and let be. Let it flow. Now, I have to confess, I'm not the first Buddhist to talk about meditation with the metaphor of going to the bathroom. In fact, Zen Master Suzuki Roshi, who is very famous for his book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which I highly recommend, by the way, he talked about that in another book, about going to the restroom is a very important practice, and it's a wonderful metaphor for our spiritual life. So, I guess it's time to conclude, but at least I gave you 3 out of the 10 or 12 practices I love. Maybe I'll share more next time with you. But saturate your mind constantly. Listen to positive music. Listen to positive messages. Read positive books of truth. Yeah, you can also listen to the news too, but put it in proportion. Make sure that for every minute of bad news you listen to, at least have 2 or more minutes of good news, of true news, of principles of life and truth and enlightenment. So, thank you so much for listening to me today, and I'm so grateful for the science of mind. I'm so grateful for the Buddha. I'm so grateful for the fact that even constipation can teach me lessons on life. Namaste.
I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world. I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.